President Trump has signed an executive order aiming to restrict birthright for citizenship, targeting children of certain immigrants, and the move is expected to face strong legal challenges, with civil rights groups arguing that it violates long-standing constitutional principles. To unpack this, let's now welcome specialist immigration attorney Ashraf Essop. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Essop. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Opportunity.
Mr. Ashraf, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity.
It's a great pleasure, sir. Now, first of all, what legal authority underpins the executive orders issued by, during Trump's presidency, and were they consistent with the constitutional principles?
So executive orders are nothing new. They've been attached to each of the presidents over time, and the presidents generally file what they consider the most important orders when they take office. And this one is no different. Before we come to the legal challenges, we must try and understand what exactly he's trying to remove. What was birthright citizenship? And this was in terms of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. What it basically said was all persons that were born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction, all citizens of the U.S., and in whichever state they reside, they basically became citizens by birth. So the status of your parents or your mother was not important at that time. And a lot of people were, in favor of that, and a lot of people obtained rights. But on the other side, the people that were agitating against it said things like this was a magnet for illegal immigration, and people would just cross into the U.S. to give birth, so they called it birth tourism or anchor baby. Now, it started obviously a long, long time ago. Interestingly, it was around 1868, just after the Civil War. And at that time, the citizenship was not extended to people of African American origin. You can imagine that slavery had been abolished, but then they weren't giving them citizenship. And by 1857, the Supreme Court ruled in the case of Dred Scott versus Stanford that that can't be the case, and the 14th Amendment was then effected, and it basically overrode it. And there were many other cases along the way. In about 1898, birthright citizenship was established by a Chinese immigrant who was born in the U.S. but denied re-entry when he went to visit China. His name was Mr. Wong, and he argued that because he was born in the U.S. and his parents' immigration status didn't affect the 14th Amendment. And basically he won on that basis. Now, it's amazing, the court has not re-examined this issue since that time. The question is, can President Trump, merely by signing an executive order, remove that? The answer is no. He says he's intending to do that, but he can't just by a stroke of a pen remove this right.
Now, perhaps the big question is, do any of Trump's executive orders set significant legal precedents for future administrations?
Well, future administrations are only basically up to the life of the president. You saw that he signed a number of orders overriding Joe Biden, his predecessor's orders. So executive orders are for the time period of that particular president. But it's really a policy statement. He's indicating to the public that this is what he intends to do, is keeping on his promises. Obviously, immigration is a very big issue there, has always been an issue. And one of the first things he's obviously now doing is tackling illegal immigration, again by way of executive order. So it was more directed towards the intention that he will do certain things, but it has to pass a legal muster.
Let's now talk about the policy implications here. Do you see a connection between this binary acknowledgement and Trump's policies on gender issues such as gender rights? And could the executive order's language and tone be interpreted as inconsistent with what I would call it protections against gender discrimination under the Constitution?
Well, certainly he removed any distinction outside male and female genders. And again, I think that he's going to be facing a lot of opposition when it comes to that. And people of all walks of life, whoever's rights have been affected by this. For example, now there's climate change, and then he's withdrawing funding from the WHO. There's a whole lot of things. People that are impacted will obviously take the matter through and fight it in the court. So I can see a very, very long legal battle ahead.
And might this acknowledgement influence interpretations of federal laws or even executive actions on gender identity and equality?
Well, certainly. I mean, like I say, that the president can't just, by a stroke of a pen, remove everything that has been built up. Mm-hmm. And there will be challenges, and then they will say to him that, look, it has to pass through the legal system of the United States. It has to, certainly in terms of trying to amend the Constitution, you're going to have to go through the Congress, and you're going to have to go through a lot of other issues. So, for example, historically, executive orders in the past were challenged successfully in court. I'm referring now to Bush's fetal tissue bank, and Congress, could also deny funding, and they say it cannot be given legal effect to, and hamstring the enforcement of any particular order. So there are lots of legal changes or legal challenges. Historically, during wars like the Korean War, President Truman tried to seize steel mills, and the U.S. Supreme Court said that he lacked the authority to take private property without authorization from Congress. So my interpretation of this, which is a layman, I'm not an expert in U.S. law, is that certainly it has to go through Congress, and Congress is not just going to be a walkthrough. Although it was interesting that with regard to the immediate arrest of foreigners in the U.S., 12 Democrats sided with the Republicans on that vote just this morning.
All right, Mr. Essop, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your legal analysis with us. We do appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. That was specialist immigration attorney Ashraf Essop joining us on the line, just reacting to President Donald Trump having signed executive orders, aiming to restrict birthright citizenship, targeting children on certain immigrants. And this move is expected to face strong legal action, in particular from socio-economic groups such as the LGBTQI community.